Hi, everyone. I'm attorney Donna DiMaggio Berger, and this is Take It to the Board, where we speak condo and HOA. Today, I'm going to be talking to an experienced real estate professional, something I've been wanting to do since we started this podcast. For those of you who are wondering why I've been wanting to have this discussion, many of the issues we see in community associations start with the purchase decision. Is living in a community association the right fit for everyone? I'm happy to have Marisa DiLenge with us today. Marisa is the founder of the DiLenge real estate team. She has lived in South Florida for 30 years and has been a licensed real estate consultant since 1992. She is a member of the National Association of Realtors, a member of the Master Brokers Forum of Broward County, a member of the Florida Association of Realtors, and a member of the Realtor Association of Greater Fort Lauderdale. Most importantly, Marisa is a former neighbor of mine, and I'm so happy to have her on the show today. So Marisa, welcome to Take It to the Board.
Well, thank you, Donna. I am so delighted to be here, and it's so lovely to connect with you after all this time.
So Marisa, I imagine it's a pretty good time to be in real estate right now. I mean, we certainly seem to be in a seller's market. Properties are selling within a matter of days, sometimes the same day, often for higher than asking price. How much longer do you see that lasting? And how do you advise people looking to sell and looking to purchase right now?
In all honesty, I'd like to say my crystal ball is doing really, really well, and I can predict the future. But what I'm not seeing a slowdown, even with the rise of interest rates. The momentum is still very strong, and it's incredible the amount of cash that's coming into Florida. So I think at this moment, I would say this market is going to maintain like this. God forbid a disaster occurs. But as we see it, I think it's going to continue to remain strong for a while because we still don't have any inventory. Luxury has been through the roof. And as evidenced by what's happening, and we'll talk about that, of all the new developments and all the companies that are moving here as a result of what transpired the last few years with COVID.
Who sets the purchase price, Marisa? So is it owners who are thinking, wow, I'm reading about a really hot market. I'm going to price this a couple $100,000 above what traditionally these units have gone for? Is it the realtors that are encouraging the pricing? How does a seller come to a pricing point?
Well, I think that most sellers that engage with the realtor are looking for the realtor's guidance. I particularly do not like to put things in a unrealistic place. So for example, if the last sale in the community was $800, I'd go $820 if you have something special, because I know that the consumer has access to so much information. So that consumer is going to research and they're going to say $820. Wow. The last sale was $800 and that house didn't have X, Y, and Z. And now I'm going to get the momentum and the bidding war. So it's really the buyer and the consumer that have driven these prices to where they are today, especially if it was priced correctly. And what we're seeing now, I think that a lot of realtors, there's some ads on the radio right now that, now's the time to sell, get your money, and we guarantee, don't worry if you have no place to move, we'll guarantee that you can stay. And I'm listening to these ads and I'm thinking, okay, so we're encouraging people to be unrealistic. And what I'm seeing is not that inventory is increasing, but I am seeing price reductions. And if you look at the statistics from the National Association of Realtors, they're reporting that prices are being reduced, and we didn't see that. We saw the craziness that anybody would pay anything and then some. But what we're seeing, if you really take a case by case, it's that they're pricing properties that should be $1 million at $1.7 million. So naturally, they have to have a price reduction because the consumer is not that crazy. So if they priced it at $1.1 million, they probably would have had multiple offers. But because they're being greedy, we're seeing these price reductions. I think the momentum is there. And I still think until we see inventory get to a point where it's somewhat normal, we're going to still be in a seller's market.
You mentioned, Marisa, that there's a lot of cash coming into Florida these days. Where's it coming from?
Primarily the Northeast. After COVID, once the borders opened up, I'm seeing a lot of cash from Canada, which is typical because a lot of Canadians do purchase in cash. They're Europeans. There's Europeans from Italy, from Norway, Sweden, that are coming in with cash. Very different than in the past where it used to be a lot of South Americans. And I focus primarily on Broward and Palm Beach County. So the demographic could be that, because I know in Miami it's more of a South American thing. But the cash is coming from here in the US, and it's just mind-boggling. Even in the lower price points, it's mind-boggling.
So, we've talked before about this. Decades ago, buying a Florida condominium or a cooperative unit was marketed as the most cost-effective way to get your little slice of paradise, right? So people bought in the 60s and the 70s, and they would say, you know what? I want to live on the beach. I want to live on the coastline. But the most cost-effective housing option was that condominium or cooperative unit as opposed to a single-family home. And we're now seeing that kind of be flipped on its ear, because in the post-Surfside landscape, we've got older buildings now that are at their 40, 50, and sometimes 60-year anniversaries, and those buildings require a lot of maintenance, a lot of repairs. And now, of course, we've got new legislation saying that they are subject to periodic engineering inspections. There's reserve funding mandates. So do you think the challenges and costs associated with maintaining and repairing older coastal buildings is going to make those communities unaffordable for a large portion of Florida's population?
Absolutely. On the coast, you cannot find a one bedroom is $500,000.
Wow.
So when you think about that,
but is that new construction, Marisa?
Oh no, new construction's $1 million. New construction's $1 million. That's an old building. The Ritz-Carlton, if you want to, in Pompano, is selling. They are 90% sold out. They do have a few one bedrooms in their Marina building, which is the building across the street from the beach, available. And those are about 856 square feet. So we're talking about small units, and they're starting at $930,000, I believe. So new is crazy, $1,000 a foot. And resales are $500-600 a foot, depending on what's been done. And the interesting thing is that if you go up and down the coast, and I've been selling a lot of condominiums the last 2 years, in particular because people are coming for that piece of paradise. I want someplace to be. I want to be in Florida.
But you also think it's maintenance free, Marisa, which we'll talk about that, because it is and it isn't.
They think it's it is turnkey to a degree. The issues have become like Surfside. There's many buildings that have not done their due diligence and have not properly maintained. And I think we're going to be seeing major developers, Coulter, the related group, Fortune, they're going to be coming in and making offers on these buildings that are not maintained correctly. And it's already happened. Casamar is being built on an old condominium site. So Related Group bought that land in Pompano. It's happening, and it's happening now in Broward County.
And we're seeing it too. And it's not always, I agree with you, the older buildings, sometimes they're very well maintained, but the the residents are deciding whether or not they want to continue to pay the money to maintain the building as it needs to be. So sometimes it is a building where maintenance has been deferred because people didn't want to pay the assessments or they didn't see the need.
Right.
But we also see developers making offers on buildings that have been very well maintained. They just happen to be older and in extremely desirable geographic locations.
Right. It's very interesting. I recently sat in on a board meeting. I sold a unit to a woman who became president of her building. It's a very small boutique building. And she wanted me to give them a real estate perspective because there's 29 owners and they've owned there forever and nobody wants to spend a nickel. Like, well, we don't have to do the seawall. Why? It didn't cave in yet. So we were talking about all the things and she said, and I was like floored, she said, listen, people, I'm the president. And I'm telling you now, if you cannot afford for these things to happen, it's a great market. Put your house for sale now and go. Because I promise you, we're going to have a special assessment. And I promise you, we're going to full reserves. And I was like, whoa. And it was like all hell broke loose on the Zoom call. So it was quite interesting. You know, in smaller buildings, this is the kind of stuff that happens, especially when you have primarily the people are only using it a couple of months out of the year or a couple of days out of the year.
Well, that's a good point, too. For some people, it's their second home. Okay. For other people, we've got, you said you sell in Miami-Dade, we've got a lot of investment purchasers who are, they don't live there. These are rental properties. So, and some of them are working on very slim margins where they have factored the assessments to be X dollars, not thinking,
Absolutely.
that maybe reserves are going to be required each year. So it's really an interesting point. That board president, I have to tell you, I would applaud her because that's what's coming. And I think that too many residents in older buildings have been completely unrealistic about what it costs to maintain a building, again, on the coast where it's subject to environmental conditions that are harsher.
Yes.
It requires a level of maintenance. And I think we're going to see, really, Marisa, only the very rich living along the coastline at some point.
I'm starting to see only the very rich living in the Tri-County area. And I should take that back because I was selling a lot of properties here in Broward, Weston Plantation, Coral Springs, to people that have raised their children and they decided they wanted to move a little bit north, maybe Jacksonville, Vero Beach. It was COVID. I wasn't crazy busy. So yes, I can get in the car and show you Vero Beach. And homes in Vero walking to the beach, 400,000, 500, gorgeous, beautiful homes. That was not 2 years ago. And their homes in Coral Springs were 800 and they were going to buy for 3, 4, 5. Now those homes are the same prices. People say to me, well, where can we go? Can we go north? There's no less expensive, even the West Coast, no matter what, unless you go smack in the middle of the state, maybe, and I'm not familiar with all the neighborhoods, but coastline properties I'm familiar with, and there's nothing. St. John's, Jacksonville, I sold homes during COVID for $280,000 new construction. They're selling for $6 now.
Wow.
So they more than doubled. But we do have wonderful opportunities and we have wonderful companies that are making Florida their headquarters. So when we say only the wealthy, it might be the wealthy and the educated in the workplace consumer that does well financially and that maybe works for one of these wonderful companies. We have 17 Fortune 500 companies that call Florida home. That's law. That's
and
huge.
more are coming. But
Exactly.
the housing options have to be there for all the people working at these companies, all the service people, the teachers, the people in the food service industry. There has to be places for these people to live.
Right. I think what we're going to see, though, especially with all this new development, I do have my real estate license in New York, and I sell a lot of condominiums, primarily new construction in Manhattan. And most of those developers, when they are building something, they have to offer properties within the building, whether they're 20 units, 60 units, 80 units, to service industry, teachers, frontline workers, et cetera, at a reduced price. And I think we're going to see that. We're seeing it in Delray. It's happened in the Delray Innovation Zone. They just built, I think, 25 homes, and you have to make under a certain amount of money. And you got to buy these houses at ridiculously low prices. Now, of course, there's caveats, just like there are in New York. If you buy it at this ridiculously low price, when you sell, you only get back what you purchased it for. There's no market increase. The developer or the community redevelopment board, whoever is socially sponsoring this, gets the proceeds. But I think we're going to see a lot more of that happening to help the service industry workers. And that's something Florida has been very lax on. We really haven't done a good job.
Right. Affordable housing has not been top of the list for years. And to your point, I think that's changing. But what about NIMBY, the not in my backyard syndrome that we see across the board when you've got people living and the proposal is there to build affordable housing nearby?
Well, I agree. That's an issue. The way it's been handled in Manhattan, they're not building affordable housing. They're making it part of these exclusive communities. Granted, they have separate entrances, but they're making it part of these exclusive communities. And they're doing the same thing in the Innovation Zone in Delray. Those homes are being built right off Swinton, where everything is happening. They're not building them and saying, okay, this is the new community, and now we're going to put horrible homes next door to you and have 10 times the amount of people living in these structures that can only accommodate XYZ. I think there has to be a shift. There really has to be a shift in order for us to maintain the service industry that we so desperately need, especially with our tourism, et cetera. And we need to shift, focus on perhaps what we're paying those that are in the front line so that they can afford to stay in Florida.
It'll be interesting to keep an eye on it and see if other cities follow suit and mimic what Delray is doing. I do represent two communities in Delray that do have affordable housing, just as you said, Marisa, built right into the community. So the homes, they're townhomes. Obviously, they look exactly the same, but they are set aside for more reasonable price points.
Yeah, and I believe that that's the way it should be. Let's give these folks an opportunity to assimilate into beautiful neighborhoods as opposed to taking, like you say, not in my backyard, and putting substandard housing just to pacify that group. Let's get that group. They're in the workplace. They're contributing to the community, and they should be able to move in and live that nice lifestyle at a discount. So we should always have that affordability.
So I mentioned at the outset about this new law, Marisa. It's being referred to colloquially as the condominium safety law. It was passed recently during the special session, and part of the requirements is new engineering inspections, structural integrity reserve study. And, in the past, potential purchasers really did not have much transparency in terms of the purchase decision when buying in a condominium, let's say. They didn't have options. They didn't have access to the budgets. They certainly didn't have access to structural reporting. This is all going to be new, and obviously it's all designed to enhance the security and safety of the community, but also to allow people to know what they're buying into. Now, I would venture to say, though, that there are going to be a significant number of people that don't know about this new law who are looking to buy. Who is going to tell them? Do you think realtors are going to play a role in letting potential purchasers know, hey, you have the right to look at the inspection report here?
I think realtors should be obligated to do so. And I've been doing that prior to Surfside. Again, that's why you have a professional. These are things the consumer does not know. They know I'm buying a place. Oh, I just want the view. Let me see the gym. Is it nice enough? Oh, the fees are good. These are all part of the equation where you have to educate people. Like I'll have people say, I don't want to spend more than $500 a month maintenance. And I'm like, stop looking at the maintenance fee, because the maintenance fee, we have to determine what is inclusive. Some buildings have a maintenance fee where it includes your air conditioning. So that's a $300 amount bill. Some have Wi-Fi, some have internet, fiber optics. It depends what's included. And then we can break down whether that works for you. Because if it's only $500 a month and it doesn't include anything, and now you have to turn on your water and you have to put on your cable and you have to do this, this, and this, by the time you twist and turn, you're at $1,000 a month. So $800 a month, all inclusive, doesn't look so bad because they can get a good deal if they're getting through cable or internet, et cetera. So there's many things that have to be looked at. And that's part of the realtor's, in my opinion, obligation to educate. And I just had a phone call from a woman. She was eating out on Commercial Boulevard and she was talking about buying in a building. And the woman that was sitting next to her said, oh, you have to call my girlfriend. She's a realtor. You can't buy in that building. They got huge problems. And she's like, well, what kind of problems do they have? And she's like, no, I'm telling you, they have problems. My girlfriend told me because I was interested and she told me that she wouldn't buy there. And it's not that I wouldn't buy there. It's that I'm not prepared to buy in a place that is ultimately going to have special assessments in the hundreds and thousands of dollars.
Right. And I appreciate that you did not name names, Marisa, for this horrible building that no one should buy in.
Well, but you know what? It's a wonderful building. It really is. But you have to know what the potential is. You have to know what they're up against and what they're going to be. In my opinion, it's going to be somewhere between 100 and 150,000 a unit. They've already spent 40,000 or 50. And it's funny, if you look at the MLS and the attachments, I love the realtors that are full disclosure. They have the attachments. Seller has already paid $40,000 special assessment for X, Y, and Z. But when you read, not just the headline, it says this is the preliminary to get started on these projects.
Right.
This is not to pay for these projects.
Well, you make a really good point. So you're looking at a unit in an older building. I wonder how many people even look up if it's a pre-92 building to see if there's sprinklers, okay? Because if there's not, you've got a deadline to install an engineered life safety system. When you're looking at an older building, and I know you're dealing with people, everybody has a budget in mind. Some are hard and fast, and some are softer price point. But with an older building, they have to understand whatever the assessment is, the regular maintenance is today, That is certainly going to change over time. It's not fixed. And now with this new safety law, there will be significant cost increases to operating budgets throughout Florida, more so for the buildings located on the coast. Across the board, you're going to see increases to account for the new reserve funding mandate, for the engineering inspections, and of course, for all the repair and maintenance work that those inspections reveal.
Exactly, 100%. And not to mention what's gone on with insurance.
Oh. Yeah, we had a guest on talking about our property insurance crisis in Florida with, we'll see if that gets fixed, but so far, not so much.
Well, in my building, our insurance premium went up 70%, 70. So what does that mean? Well, right now, it's all hunky-dory because we've already been assigned our monthly assessments for the year. This shortfall is going to happen at the end of the year. And they had a special meeting, and most people, they're not even reading the agenda. They're not even understanding what's happening. And the agenda item basically said, do we need valet? So most people think, oh, it's just they want to get rid of valet. I don't use valet. But it's really not that. It's, do we need valet? Do we need to worry about, should we be including cable or should everyone be on their own? The list goes on to cut so that we can pay that $70,000 overage or raise everybody up. So everything is so complex. And the ELSS, I mean, there's so many people that are in denial about this. Oh, we fought it once, and even though they mandated it, we're going to change that. You'll see, it's not going to go through. So a lot of these property managers and boards are completely thinking that this is not going to happen, even though we know it's been mandated.
And the deadline is January 1, 2024. So for our listeners in Florida, there is a requirement for older buildings, 7 stories or higher, to have sprinkler systems, or if they've opted out of a full sprinkler system, to install what's called an engineered life safety system, or an ELSS. And this, for the last 15 years, this ball has been kicked down the field a little bit. But after Surfside, I just realistically do not see any more time being granted for older buildings to install these engineered life safety systems. There is a January 1, 2024 deadline. And as we know now, there's going to be a crunch not only on engineers, the demand for engineers has skyrocketed, but also contractors throughout Florida. So you mentioned, and I'm sitting here as an association attorney, Marisa, when people start cutting on their budget, and we saw this during the recession years, right? During 2007, 2008, you also have to look at your documents, because if your documents require the association to provide valet and to provide certain services, bulk cable or Wi-Fi, you can't just cut without amending your documents, because now arguably you are in breach of your own documents by doing so. This can become quite complicated, and I would urge people to reach out to the association council as well before they just start yanking stuff out of the budget.
Right. Exactly.
So what kind of information, Marisa, can a potential purchaser or tenant reasonably expect to receive from a realtor with regard to an association's rules and restrictions? What can they expect the realtor to tell them about the rules?
I don't like to tell anybody anything because words can be misconstrued. I like to get them all of the documentation and have them read it. And then if they have a question and I feel that it's a reasonable question that I can answer accurately, I will answer the question. But a lot of times, some things are written in a situation where we need somebody like you, the attorney, to tell us
what does this mean?
What exactly are they saying here? So I always, in the past, when the market wasn't on fire, I would do my due diligence beforehand and get everything before I even wasted my time to show a unit, because I would make sure that there was no litigation. I'd go to the Broward clerk and see what was happening. I would look if the unit was renovated. I would look to see if permits were pulled. I would do all of that in advance because I didn't want to waste my time and have something blow up in the end. And I think people respect. I want to see that. And then I explain to you why it's not a good idea. Of course, you're in control if you still want to see it. Absolutely. But I don't want to sell you something that's got $200,000 worth of work and not one thing has been permitted.
Right.
In my opinion, there's too much liability there, and you assume those issues once you buy it. But today, the market is moving so fast, there's no time for any of that. So the due diligence comes after. So you make the offer, pray that you're lucky enough to get it. And once you get it, then you ask the listing agent or the property manager for the information. What I have found is, especially after Surfside, property managers are not friendly to the buyer's realtor. They do not want to give you anything. They don't want to share anything. You have to get it. And they always say this, it needs to come from the seller. So then it's the listing agent that has to get you the information. And depending on who that person is, they may not have the tools to explain exactly what's needed.
Well, you know why they do that, Marisa. So first of all, they don't want to blow up a potential sale and then have the seller say, you shouldn't have divulged that information because now you've blown up my sale. However, this is going to change with the new law that requires transparency for potential purchasers when it comes to the structural condition of the building. But for other things, for instance, let's say you had a purchaser who wanted to see the operating budget, or let's say 12 months of the minutes of board meetings to see how functional the board is. That stuff would have to come through the seller. The seller would have to make those document inspection requests, get the documents, and provide them. But your purchasers have a 3-day rescission right under Florida law. That's pursuant to the condo and HOA riders to the flaw bar contract. How many people have actually rescinded a contract after getting the governing documents? Have you had anybody say, I've read the documents and I can't live here?
Not so much I've read the documents. I've read the minutes and I don't like what I'm seeing, that they've been talking about renovating their pool for the last 12 months and that it's got a leak. I did have somebody cancel because he was buying a 1-bedroom that was converted to a 2. Now this is a cool story. The listing agent is the president of the board. He's also the contractor who converted this 1-bedroom to a 2-bedroom with permits. And he told the client that because it's a 2-bedroom, you can have 4 people. But the condo association doesn't see it as a 2-bedroom because the room doesn't have a window. And it's really not a 2-bedroom. But anyway, back at the ranch, the board, they didn't deny my client, but they told my client, you can't buy here with 2 children. He's like, well, we're only going to come on the weekends occasionally, and my kids are babies. And they're like, oh no, that's a 1-bedroom, 3-person occupancy. And then he went on to claim, well, the listing agent who's your president, blah, 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 blah. And the property manager said, no can do. Sorry. Documents say 3 people. Your application has 4. So, I mean, technically he was denied, but not really,
But it got real complicated. It got real complicated real fast.
Yeah. And interesting. I have someone else that's interested in that building last week. And I said, let me double check Broward Clerk of the Courts. He's no longer president and he's being sued. So it's crazy.
Well, I'm gonna match your story because when my sister was looking to buy a condo unit years ago, I went around. She said, "Will you come with me?" I said, "Sure." So one day we went to see a bunch of different condos. She actually wound up buying one in Plantation, but at one of the condos, she really liked it. But it was obvious when we walked through it that there were common laundry facilities on every floor. And when we got into the unit, there was not a washer and a dryer. And my sister turned to the realtor and said, "Hey, can I put a washer and dryer in?" And the realtor said, "Yeah, absolutely." And I said, "Wait a second. There's currently no washer and dryer here. There are obviously common area laundry facilities." A couple different things. One, Joanne, that's my sister, you could be buying a lawsuit if you buy this unit and think you're just going to put in a washer and dryer, tap into the common element pipes. Also, a lot of times those laundry leases, they prohibit owners from installing individual washers and dryers. So in that regard, it gets back to your point, Marisa, about using a realtor who knows and understands what the restrictions are in the community.
And sadly, even if they know, some people are just dishonest. They just want to make the sale. And these aren't lifelong professionals. I mean, I've been doing this in this town for 30 years. And there literally is about 150 to 200 agents that I continuously do business with. This is their livelihood. This is what they do. And they take it as seriously as I do. The sad part about real estate and licensing is that anybody can take the test and hang their license anywhere and practice real estate without knowing what they are doing. So they could be a tennis mom, no disrespect, but they're not doing it every day. And they list their sister's condo and think that they can say anything and do anything because they don't understand all of the details that are involved. It's frightening. It's frightening what's transpiring. I think there should be stronger guidelines about licensing. And I think that when you get licensed, even though we have continuing education that we're required to do every 2 years, 14 hours, I think there should be something on that indicates what kind of volume are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Are you really selling real estate?
Is
or
this really your profession? Or are you dabbling? I mean, to your point, I'm listening to your stories and I'm thinking, why would somebody be that short-sighted when they're a real estate professional to answer questions without really knowing if the answers are accurate? I mean, these people, they're going to be gone, but the people buying the property have to live within the framework of the documents. But to your point, you're right. Maybe it's people who they're looking for a quick hit. Maybe it's not a full-time career. Years ago in Florida, a couple of years ago, we were looking at deregulation of a number of professions in Florida. I don't know if realtors were on that list, but I agree with you. I think regulation and licensing is critical, particularly when you're talking about many times when somebody's buying a home, that's their single biggest investment in their life.
It's huge. It's absolutely huge. And it's mind-boggling. We have 10,000 licensed realtors in Broward County. Like I said to you earlier, there's only 200 of us that can actually feed our family and take this seriously and really want our clients to make the right choice for them. And the only way they can make that choice is by us getting them the information that they need to make a decision that fits their family. So they need to be aware, especially when you're buying a condominium. An HOA is a little bit less restrictive. You need to know the rules, but usually you're not going to have crazy things happen as you would in a condominium or a co-op for that matter.
Unless you want to really paint the exterior of your home purple.
Right.
Then you really do need to know what the architectural control provisions are in your HOA beforehand. Right,
exactly. But those most HOAs, in my opinion, are extraordinarily reasonable. They just want the community to continue to maintain the value. And I think that anybody that buys wants that as well. If you're making an investment that large, don't you want it to continue to increase?
This is a good place to pause our conversation for now. Please be sure to join Marisa and me for the second part of this conversation. Thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to follow and rate us on your favorite podcast platform or visit takeittotheboard.com for more ways to connect.